Welcome to Fridays with Fintelekt. My guest speaker today is Dr. David Utzke, an expert in cryptoeconomics and distributed ledger technology, currently working full-time at the US Treasury, IRS, CID, Cybercrimes unit, as well as the University of Advancing Technology as an associate professor. David was earlier with the US military. David, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, David, at the outset, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your career, and how you landed up doing investigations involving cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, so my career in this space really started in high school. I had an interest in going into financial economics, and gaming was pretty big in the 80s, and even before that. So I actually started coding in high school on a Tandy with an 8086 processor, cassette tape drive, and then Professor Chum started writing these articles about digital currencies, and it's like already being involved in virtual currencies and gaming. Cryptocurrencies fascinated me, so he pretty much became my unofficial mentor, and reading his papers throughout the 80s to see that then evolve into the first cryptocurrency DigiCash in 1990. Continued to follow his work and his career, and I still watch him on YouTube today. He's still very much involved in the space, and really what I consider the father of cryptocurrencies. Went on from there to do my undergraduate work, graduate work, and ultimately my doctorate in financial economics, and went on to do postdoctoral work at MIT in cryptoeconomics, as well as looking at other aspects, use case of distributed ledger technology in smart city design concepts with the use of distributed ledger technology, AI, and IoT components. And yeah, it just kind of all blossomed from there. Took a lot of my computer skills and things like that into the military, spent 10 years there, came out 10 years as a securities analyst, working with a wonderful company, Vanguard, and then came back into the government in 2010, and have worked with them to provide some expertise, hopefully, in what they do in this space. But I really enjoy my work at the university, teaching grad students and introducing them to distributed ledger technology, helping them code their first blockchains, their DApp smart contracts, and that's, I find that very pleasurable.
Fantastic. That's very, very interesting, David. So, David, the whole area of crypto and virtual assets, as you know, is rapidly evolving. What would you say are some of the new developments in the crypto and virtual asset space that are worth watching out for?
Yeah, and that's a great question from the standpoint that people have really lagged in the space. Myself having been involved in it for so long, I mean, we had our first blockchain in 1990. Many people haven't been introduced to it until about 2017. And so they think that this is a new nascent technology, when in reality, it's been around for decades. It just hasn't been noticed. And like with many technologies, until it gets associated with something of value, which happened in 2009 with Bitcoin, people started to take notice. But then it was still funny money, right? It wasn't real. They'd forgotten about the DigiCash and the centralized cryptocurrencies of the 90s. And many people don't understand why cryptocurrencies had to move to decentralized platforms. So it's, yeah, the evolution is much longer than since 2009. It goes back much further. So around this current day, one of the things that you see is really the trend I'm finding is that from a technology perspective, the focus isn't on crypto coins anymore, it's on crypto tokens. And a lot of people use that word, coins and tokens interchangeably, but they're two very different things in the technology. And so token technology in the last 18 months to roughly 3 years has just exploded. So now, NFTs were introduced in 2017. Well, when did people really recognize them? Not until recently with the Beeple piece, $69 million non-fungible token. All of a sudden, non-fungible tokens have been around since 2017. But now it's like you've got something of value associated with it, so people are setting up and taking notice, right? So when you take a look at token technology, it's really moving the DeFi space. You've got massive quantities of value in liquidity pools within the DeFi space, the decentralized finance, which is a whole nother fascinating topic to get into, and really a whole side ecosystem within the distributed ledger space and really the smart contract space.
Right. So, David, we can't have any conversation these days without mentioning the pandemic. So, do you believe that the pandemic has actually had a significant impact on the crypto landscape, or do you think it would have continued to develop at the same pace nevertheless?
No, I definitely think, and most people currently in this space, and really from a cryptoeconomics perspective, it has accelerated the pace of recognition of what it can do because of the distancing aspect of that's been built into many guidelines by WHO, and certainly here within the United States through different guidance in states. It's been varied across the states here in the United States as to the extent, but this distancing, when you take a look at distributed ledger technology specifically, I mean, it's borderless. And so if I want to, in a private transaction, pass currency to you, I have to basically be in close proximity to you. With distributed ledger technology being borderless, you have now a means of transacting with someone without having to be in contact with them. But that's kind of on the legitimate side. On the nefarious actor side, it's certainly been used in more nefarious ways as well during this pandemic environment. More people have been online, more people have had time to kind of explore this idea of how I always wanted to know more about cryptocurrencies and things like that. So you've had a lot more people jumping into the space, and then of course all the hype around the valuation and Bitcoin and things like that has further propagated people to get into something they really don't understand, and criminals have taken advantage of that.
Right, right. So let's speak a bit about the investor side, David. There is intense speculation and volatility in prices associated when it comes to investing in cryptocurrencies. And the usual safeguards that are provided by regulators for investors in stocks or other asset classes are missing. So, like circuit breakers or protection against fraud. So do you find investors aware enough and adequately educated in this area to really understand both the risks and rewards of investing in cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying no, they're not. But I'll also add the caveat that when you take a look at the developers and founders like Professor Chum, and I could certainly talk about Satoshi Nakamoto, having interacted with a lot of the emails during that development period of roughly 2000 to 2008, when distributed ledger technology was being put together with cryptocurrency technology. But the idea was behind creating a not anonymous but a private payment rail where I don't have to use my credit card and pass all my PII. I should be able to maintain that privacy and still have the assurance that, number one, my transaction with the person that I'm working with has the ability to receive their payment, and I have the ability to receive my goods. And it doesn't make any difference who I am. So, cryptocurrency, distributed ledger technology is blind to who you are. It doesn't care. So, that's the beauty of the system too. But on the investment front, no, people don't understand what they're getting into. It was never designed for investment. So that kind of going full circle. So people out of Wall Street saw an opportunity to basically take cryptocurrencies and make them an alternative currency, an alternative investment. And so now you've introduced intermediaries into a system that was designed to eliminate intermediaries. And who do you trust? Well, distributed ledger technology was designed as a trustless system, and yet now you're interjecting intermediaries like your traditional system, and you're having to now, in a trustless system, find points of trust so that I can invest in these things that it's like, what are you really investing in anyway?
Right. Very, very well said. Very well said, David. So, on the same topic of regulation, do you think, we should be looking at a central global regulator in the space soon? And if so, what type of agency do you think would be best suited? I mean, something like the FATF or the Interpol or UN, or someone entirely different?
Yeah, again, really looking at this from a crypto economics perspective, and being a technologist in the distributed ledger technology space, I am not an advocate in any way, shape, or form of any government coming in and trying to regulate distributed ledger technology. Although, how can they do that anyway? If it's a truly decentralized system like the internet, how do you control that? So a government's only into a decentralized open source system is through the intermediaries that use it. So how does a government regulate the internet? Well, they try to regulate Amazon and Facebook and all the users of the internet, right? And so now you've got these intermediaries interjecting themselves into a system not designed to have intermediaries, and that's really going to be the point at which governments are going to be able to interject themselves into it. But see, here's the thing: cryptocurrency and crypto assets at large. So not every digital asset out there is, number one, a crypto asset, and not every crypto asset is a cryptocurrency. So kind of backtracking on my last statement around investment, there are some legitimate crypto asset type investment opportunities out there to stand up projects in digital identity and alternative decentralized finance that brings banking to people that don't have that opportunity. The use of distributed ledger technology for property rights recording. You now have an immutable record that I own this property. It's not subject to maybe some bad government destroying records to say, oh, you don't really own that, right? There is this permanent record. So with that in mind, the aspect of regulation around cryptocurrency is going to be very limited. The governments globally need to understand the difference between cryptocurrencies as a crypto asset and focus on the currency components and those intermediaries and regulate them appropriately, and not try to, it seems like many of their attempts are to try to regulate distributed ledger technology, and it just isn't going to happen. It's going to frustrate everybody. And by over-regulating, what you're going to do is further drive the technology to do what it did from 90 to 2009. It's going to push it towards rather than a privacy-centric, hey, protecting my privacy in financial transactions, to actually going underground and causing developers to say, we can make this anonymous. And even in the Bitcoin network, they've recently voted to add privacy enhancing features to the Bitcoin network, which will introduce Taproot and Schnorr signatures, which really, is going to change the landscape around following Bitcoin transactions, which has been very transparent up to this point. So regulators need to really be thoughtful and mindful. So to your point about which government agency regulates it, wow. Again, it depends on, are you talking about the currency side? Are you talking about the asset side around security? Because again, in token technology, a currency can't really be a security. A token can. So coins and tokens, again here, when you start looking at the underlying technology, I can code a token to be a currency, a security, and a utility all at the same time, or uniquely to be one of those categories, or even other things. Coins are only designed for one thing: peer-to-peer payment. That's it. To the extent that it's becoming an alternative investment vehicle, is kind of like the US dollar trading on the Forex. You're trading and leveraging it against the volatility against other foreign currencies, right? And that's almost what they're trying to do on the coin side. So yeah, it gets crazy when you start talking about regulations. Regulators need to better understand the technology. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. David, with all this happening, and we also have each government trying to work on some plan to move towards digital currency, or move against it, or whatever. What can we expect the future of money to look like? I mean, I know it's a highly speculative question, but given your background, I think you're probably well placed to answer it.
Yeah, so again, it's definitely something that my academic work and postdoctoral work in this area, I think one of the biggest things I try to teach my grad students is, when we look at money and currency, they're really two different things. Money was defined by economics. Money is what people typically think of as a store of value, unit of account, those features. And those were introduced within a monetary system by economists. Now, currency is actually the application by an ecosystem, an economic system, a government. And so when you take a look at a fiat currency, it's called a currency for a reason, because currency is different than money. A currency tries to achieve the objectives of what the features of money are defined within economics. So when you look at a store of value, well, you look at a government's currency that fluctuates against other government currencies. They talk about Bitcoin not being a good store of value because of its volatility. Well, most people fail to realize that because they buy goods and services in their country, they don't see the volatility around their own currency. They see an up and down value in a global trade environment. They see the up and down value of goods that are that they buy. But if you've ever had to live in a different country and convert your country's currency that you're being paid in while living in another country, you quickly learn that your fiat currency isn't so much different than Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Litecoin. It fluctuates against that foreign currency economy. So when you take a look at central banks and what they're trying to do in governments around what many people are demanding with regards to real-time settlement, right? They don't want to wait 3 days or 24 hours for a bank request to be processed to get to the intended recipient. You look at cryptocurrencies, they solve that problem. I can make a cryptocurrency transaction between a peer and myself within seconds, minutes, depending on the cryptocurrency that you're using. Bitcoin's one of the slowest, but of course it's using the oldest and clunkiest technology. Blockchain being from 1991, that was what was available to the creators of Bitcoin at the time. You even look at the proof of work consensus protocol, first developed in 93 and then enhanced in 97, but Bitcoin came out in 2009. So again, you're still talking about a lot of protocols that were developed much before. So governments have to look at this and say, how can I still maintain control? Because governments always want control, right? They want control of the currency that they're issuing. And many countries already have a form of wholesale. And what we're talking about here are CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. They're trying to say, how can we compete with the open source cryptocurrencies and things like that? Many people fail to realize that most architectures of a CBDC at the retail level. So wholesale, you have your central bank interacting with your member banks. And of course, then the consumer deals with the member banks, but consumers don't have access to that digital central bank digital currency that the central bank uses with its member banks. So what most people are clamoring for is not just a CBDC, they want a retail version of the CBDC. And whether that is a direct account with the central bank itself, that's one model, or where the central bank would give authority to its member banks to then issue accounts and have a retail access to that electronic money. And those are not cryptocurrencies. That falls into the virtual currency realm because governments are not looking at setting up a blockchain, decentralizing it, having nodes and things like that. Most of the models, and this is what China is currently testing, they are using blockchain technology to record transactions of their virtual digital currency of the yuan. So the yuan is not a cryptocurrency. It's actually a virtual currency. It's not based in any cryptographic protocols. Virtual currencies are perfect for that because they're centralized. You can produce more of it. Cryptocurrencies, as many people know, like with Bitcoin, it goes through a process of being minted through proof of work consensus protocol called mining, right? And so you can't just put it out there whenever you want. It has to go through a process. Virtual currencies, like in the gaming environment, the loyalty point environment, those are all virtual currencies. They're centralized, no cryptographic protocols. They've existed in the gaming environment for decades, since the 70s. And so these virtual currencies, a government can say one day, hey, we've got, so for instance, in the United States, the e-dollar, we have $10 trillion of US dollars currently in circulation. If we digitize that, one day it might be 10 trillion. The next day it might say, oh, we're going to expand that to 12 trillion. We need to stimulate the economy. So we're going to expand. You can't do that with cryptocurrencies. You can't just go out and mint a whole bunch of new cryptocurrencies like that because you destroy the protocol systems within the cryptographic protocols to be able to just print money or print currency at will, right? So virtual currencies are much more suited to that. It's a challenge for governments because, again, they don't understand a lot of the technology, and China experimenting with it. There's many countries that are currently researching it, looking at it, and some have said this is way too complex of a problem. We already have a system of electronic transactions that is working for us. We're not going down that path. But again, countries are looking at the fact that countries that are developing a centralized digital currency have the ability to bypass the traditional banking system now. And so what does that mean? So you've got a number of competing issues that governments have to wrestle with.
Right, absolutely. Fascinating, David. So, David, you mentioned some time back, about non-fungible tokens or NFTs, and it seems to be clear that they are here to stay. But what can be done early on in the growth of NFTs to really make the space more transparent and mitigate any likely AML or CFT risks?
Yeah, when you look at the token environment, really NFTs are a very small portion of it. So you have your fungible tokens and your non-fungible tokens, i.e. your NFTs. Um, NFTs have a use case, which is really being abused right now, because now they're talking about fractional NFTs, which was actually an Ethereum improvement project, an EIP that was raised in 2018 after the first NFTs, the ERC 721s, were introduced in 2017. And it's like, developers are like, why create a fractional NFT when you can just do a limited mint of a fungible token like an ERC 20? Right? You don't need to fractionalize something that's designed to be a unique asset. And so, you know, the proposed use case around NFTs and fractionalize them is, well, what if I want to, you know, an art piece? What if I want to go together with a bunch of other people and basically collaborate in buying an art piece? So many times when you buy the NFT, people think that, oh, you're just buying this digital asset. Well, many times what you're doing is buying the underlying physical asset as well. And so if I want to go together to get an expensive art piece, transacting and having created this NFT, why not just do a limited mint of an ERC 20 rather than trying to fractionalize something? So yeah, NFTs are here to stay. You see many celebrities, sports figures, things like that getting on the bandwagon of NFTs. And it is a great way to take something that's unique, it's one of a kind, and just keep it as what NFTs were designed to do, to be a unique token of that item, and it is the only one that exists. And you own it, there's an immutable ledger piece. One of the problems that we're seeing in NFTs right now are what are called vanishing NFTs. Because NFTs, tokens, are created through smart contracts are not bound to a distributed ledger. Smart contracts, which there's many types of crypto contracts. We've got wormhole contracts, smart contracts, code chain, Ricardian contracts. So when you talk about smart contracts, we're talking about a very specific type. And so like within the Ethereum platform, you have a smart contract layer over the mainnet. The blockchain of the Ethereum platform is there to capture the state variables that exist around creating these tokens and recording transactions on the blockchain for immutability. So vanishing NFTs could actually be created on a centralized server, which is what criminals are doing. And they again, they're taking advantage of consumers buying these things up, not really knowing what they're getting, selling them, and on a centralized server, I can delete it, poof, it's gone. So I've just spent a lot of money for this NFT that I thought, wow, this is really cool. I own an NFT, and then poof, it's gone. Because it wasn't created on a distributed ledger. It was created in a centralized server. And so now you've got nothing. So, you know, the same problem we've got with scammers on the cryptocurrency side, and we've got scammers in fiat. We've got scammers everywhere. People need to set up. It doesn't matter the technology or the absence of technology. Scammers are out there, and they're always going to try to take advantage of a public that does not inform itself. So a consumer has an onus, a responsibility. Get educated on something that you don't know about. If you don't trust it in a centralized environment, don't do it. The technology, if you don't understand it before you get involved in it. So, you know, again, the majority of token activity out there, especially in the decentralized finance space, are actually fungible tokens, not non-fungible tokens. But there is a place for non-fungible tokens in that space as well. So I wish we had the time to go into the technical aspects of that. Most people find it fascinating, but I think you get the point.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's truly fascinating, and I think great advice coming from you. So, you know, my last question for you. You know, we hear from many compliance professionals from our community that it is very challenging to keep continuously updated with the latest happenings in crypto. You know, for example, all that you just said. What would your advice be to the AML CFT compliance community to keep abreast with this evolution? And what would you say are the pitfalls of not staying in touch with this evolving reality?
Yeah, I mean, my take on financial institutions and AML is that when you take a look at most financial institutions, they're missing not only the virtual currency, because many gaming systems, once you earn that reward it gets deposited directly into your bank. Um, they don't understand that there's actually uh, auction sites that have existed since 1999 that, they think of them as these closed systems within the virtual currency environments, which are really there's auction sites all over the place to move your virtual currency, your skins, your weapons, all these other things, and make money doing it. But many financial institutions create their own AML systems, software, things like that, and they're just not designed to capture these more advanced technology components like cryptocurrencies and virtual currencies. And I can't speak to the motivation or rationale behind why they do that, but they really need to figure out that banking is in many realms is still using old coding languages around their systems of COBOL and Fortran, and those people are retiring, and they're trying to find people that can help them maintain their systems. They're just antiquated, and so them trying to get into this new technology. And even in the United States, you've got the OCC coming out and saying, oh, banks can custody digital assets. And it's like, well, number one, you can't custody a digital asset because it can never be separated from the distributed ledger. What they're doing is taking over your private key. Can they provide the security around that? And when you look at banks and just around the whole AML thing, how do you know who actually owns that key? Do you have AML procedures in place to adequately vet, am I holding the key of someone who actually is on the sanctions list, or that maybe that key controls crypto assets on the distributed ledger from drug trade, human trafficking? Are they prepared to deal with those issues? So really, in a nutshell, again, something I could spend an hour talking about. I think you get the point that banks getting into this space and even currency flowing through their accounts, they're not doing a good job now of capturing the digital currencies that are being turned into fiat currencies flowing through their accounts. And now if they're actually going to bank people and their digital currencies by holding their private keys, wow. What else can I say? Wow. I don't think they're prepared.
Right, right. Great. David, fascinating speaking with you. And thank you so much for appearing on this episode of Fridays with Fintelekt. I'm definitely going to reach out to you for more information on this space, and maybe we'll get you back again for a more detailed session as well later, whenever time permits for you. So thanks so much.
Thank you again for having me, and it was a pleasure.